Okay, we're just going to now look at multiplying values by 10, 100 and 1000 and dividing by 10, 100 and 1000. And again, we're going to use the place value table to help us do this. Okay, I'm going to start off with 1 unit as shown. Now, if I do my 1 times table, and I'm not trying to sound silly by saying that, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 1 times 1, 1 times 2, 1 times 3, 1 times 4, 1 times 5, 1 times 6, 1 times 7, 1 times 8, 1 times 9, 1 times 10. You can physically count that 1 times 10 is 10. And I can replace my 10 units with one single 10 card. Okay, what does that mean in terms of our place value table? Well, I started with 1 in my unit column, I times it by 10, and now I have 1 in my 10 column, and no units. This is what we tell you, you would have been told this before in the past, that when we times by 10, the columns just shift 1 space to the left. If I have 10 times 10, I do the same thing. 1 times 10 would be 10. 2 times 10 is 20. 3 times 10, 30. 4 times 10 is 40. 5 times 10 is 50. You've got 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So I can see that 10 times 10 can be replaced by 100 card. So I can get rid of these 10 and I can replace that with 100. I started with 10, 110 no units, I times it by 10 and I've ended up with 100. You can see the 1 has shifted 1 column across. Not just the 1, but the 0 has shifted 1 column across, and this 0 has shifted 1 column across as well. Remember that these would all be technically 0 because we don't have any fractions. Okay, you just don't tend to write them normally, otherwise you'd be writing infinite zeros after every number you wrote. Okay, this can go on and on. If I had 10 hundreds, it'd be 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1000. So if I times 100 by 10, my 1 column moves over, it literally gets 10 times bigger, and so on. So when we times by 10, all of the digits move 1 column to the left. They literally get 10 times bigger. To show you it doesn't just work with whole numbers, I could also have 1/10 or 0.1. 0.1, 0.2, or 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, or 0.5 or a half, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9 or 9/10, 10/10. We've already shown that the biggest number that I can write in the 10th column, like any other one, is 9. So 10/10, if I started with 1/10 and I added or times it by 10 and had 10/10, I have to write the 1 for the 10/10 in the unit column because I can't write 10 in the 10th column. So you can see it works with decimals too. If I had 0.1 or 1/10 and I timed it by 10, the columns have again just moved 1 space to the left. So if you had 4.85, 4.85, and I times it by 10, all of the numbers will just get 10 times bigger, The 4 will move into the tens column, the 8 will move into the units column, and the 5 would move to the tenths column, and now there are no more hundredths. If I times that by 10, 48.5 times 10 is 4, moves into the hundred column, 8 moves into the 10 column, and the 5 moves into the units column. So it would be 485. The number of zeros in the number you're timing with, so for example 10 has 1 0. It gets 10 times bigger. If you're timesing by 10, you just simply move 1 space to the left, or 1 column to the left. If you times by 100, you move 2 spaces to the left. So if I ignore this column here, you can see that from 4.85, because I've moved this column and this column, the 4 has gone from here to here, I've actually done 4.85 times 100, and I've got 485. Now when you actually think about that logically, it makes a lot of sense. I started with 4 units, and I times it by 100, so I've now got 4 hundreds. I started with 4 units. I've made each one 100 times bigger, so 100 times 1 is 100, making that 100 times bigger is that, making this one 100 times bigger is that, and making this one 100 times bigger is that. You can see I've physically got 400, so it does make sense. It's a lot more difficult to show, but when we're dividing by 10, we're making things 10 times smaller. So instead of moving to the left, the numbers would move back to the right. So if I wanted to divide 485 by 10, the columns would move this way. If I wanted to divide 485 by 100, they'd move back 2 spaces. So the things you need to remember when we're timesing by 10, 100 or 1000 or any amount, you move to the left by the number of columns that we have zeros. If we're dividing by 10, 100 or 1000, we move to the right by the number of zeros. This is a really useful tool because it helps us to understand we can do multiplication very quickly. We can break numbers down into tens and units, and we can do very quick multiplication, but it's also useful for understanding fractions and percentages, which we're going to do later.